So this morning, it's 10:30. I'm sitting at Taco Bell, and I'm just kind of scrolling through Instagram, as you do. So there's the announcement that the Jeffree Star brush set is going to be on sale at Ulta today. And I'm looking at the clock, and I'm like, that's in like a half an hour the store opens. There's an Ulta right around the corner. So I did. I ended up getting both the brushes and the sponges. I figured I needed some new sponges. My beauty blenders are so old. And at this point, I'm pretty sure you guys know what is in here. This is 7 brushes. There's face brushes, there's eye brushes. There's also the sponge set that has like a regular size beauty blender type sponge, and then 2 minis. So I think what I'm gonna do is create a look just using all of these. I'm gonna go ahead and wet these beauty sponges and get like my foundation and concealer and all that crap on. And then after we're done with that, we'll go ahead and dive into the brush set. And I think I'm gonna use all the brushes today just to see how those work out. Okay, so I have a damp sponge and an old favorite. This is the Maybelline Fit Me Matte and Poreless. This is in the shade 112 Natural Ivory. Now I feel like the Morphe sponges are a good dupe for the Real Technique sponges. I personally prefer the original Beauty Blender. It's just so soft and so cushiony, but the original Beauty Blender is $20. So I went ahead and bought this, and just to have the complete collection, I figure I might as well. So foundation is on the sponge, and I'm gonna just kind of dot that around my face. It's soft and it gets the job done, but I just think it's so, what's the word? It's kind of stiff. And even the sound that this thing makes as it's hitting your face, it's like a full-on thud. And then for concealer, I thought that we would go ahead and stay in the Maybelline family. This is the Instant Age Rewind. This is in the shade Ivory. And I'm gonna use that on the little mini blender, which if you look at it when it's wet compared to when it's dry, it does get a little bit bigger, but not by much. And honestly, it doesn't get that much softer when it's wet either, but it's fine. It is what it is. Now, I have found that this concealer also makes a really good eyeshadow primer, so I'm probably gonna go ahead and apply that to my eyelid as well. Now, this one definitely isn't very soft on that under eye area either. Now I'm also going to take that little mini blender and I am going to use that to set my concealer with some powder and hope that I don't explode a big cloud of powder right into my eyeball, which tends to happen quite a bit because I do go in pretty heavy with powder under the eye. So now we'll go ahead and start using some of these brushes. Let's go ahead and slide this little cardboard thing off of there. I've got hairs sticking out of my fingers. How long has that been there? I'll actually probably get some use out of this little bag. This will be good for travel. I like the smell of plastic stuff like this. I don't know what it is. I also like the smell of gasoline, so I don't know. Now, I will say these are all very aesthetically pleasing. I mean, honestly, they feel like pretty standard Morphe quality brushes. So I'm gonna start with the JS1. I think that this one is meant to be a foundation brush, but I don't use a brush for foundation. I always use a beauty blender, but I will go ahead and use this just to start to build up my contour. Using Bone Beige by MAC, I'm just gonna kind of swirl this brush around in there, and then using that brush just to kind of stamp in the base of my contour. It feels very soft on the skin. It's not scratchy. It doesn't have like those pokey bristles. It's very soft. And then starting the contour of the cheekbones. This is a really good brush for this. This actually feels like a beauty blender on the skin. And then to deepen up the contour, I'm going to use the JS3. I'm going to go into the shade Shadowy by MAC and just deepen up all of those contours and kind of darken up my beard area a little bit. And then I'm actually going to double task with the JS2. I'm going to use this to set down some lighter powder underneath my eyes, in the center of my forehead, down my nose, and on my chin. And then I'm also going to use that brush to go ahead and apply my blush. Now the JS2 was very soft, and I think I'm really gonna like this one in larger areas of the face, but I think this one is still just a little bit too big for my under eye area. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and stick to something like the Luxie 660 Precision Foundation Brush, which again is just a little bit smaller than that one. It's about half the size. So next I'm gonna go ahead and use the JS6 to do my nose contour in the beginning of my eyebrows, and the JS7, because this is an eyebrow brush, to go ahead and fill in my eyebrows. So I'll go ahead and do that off camera, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about these brushes compared to what I usually use. So that was very interesting. In fact, I wish that I had filmed it and I didn't. So for my nose contour, beginning of my eyebrows, I always use the Sigma E25 blending brush. So this JS6 brush really is the exact same thing, only with a longer handle, honestly. If you take a look at it, side by side comparison, they really do look the same from the front. and they also look the same from the side. Now, I haven't washed this brush yet. I just went straight in out of the package. So when you wash a brush, it's definitely gonna change a little bit. So I'll keep you updated, or I'll put it in the description box down below if I still feel the same way about this brush after it's been washed and then used again. But what was really interesting was the eyebrows. So I always use, I don't even know what this brush is. This is the Anastasia, maybe it's like the number 12 brush, but it's an eyebrow brush. It's got a spoolie on one end and this little angled brush on the other side. These bristles are really, really stiff. And that's kind of why I've always liked it, because it's maintained its shape for the last few years that I've been using it. And you know how when you're used to doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you never change it, you never want to change it because you're used to that thing and you don't want to try anything else. And then you do try something else and you're like, well, I'll be damned. That worked really, really well. Well, I had that moment with this brush right here. So where this one is very stiff and it's really maintained its shape over the years, this one isn't that stiff. This one is very soft, it's very flexible, but it is very, very thin. So when I applied the dip brow with this brush, what I noticed was it just went on really quick and I was done with it in like 2 seconds. Now, what happens with this brush that I guess I just kind of noticed today is that when I apply the dip brow with this brush, what happens is as I'm putting it on, it's almost kind of scratching off the foundation underneath it. So I kind of have to keep going back into the pomade to kind of build up the brow and kind of pack the color on, softly blend it out, because if I put too much pressure on it, it really is just kind of erasing everything that I'm putting down. But this saved me a lot of time. If you're out there and you don't have any eyebrows and you're having to draw that shit on every day, this is the one. This is the one. God, I need a lift right here. I had to cancel my Botox appointment because I can't afford it right now. I've got all these lines happening on my forehead here. I'm a mess. I'm an absolute mess. So speaking of things I can't afford, I wanted to include an eye look in this tutorial, obviously. And today, after I got these brushes, I'm like, well, there is this palette that I've been looking at for a long time and I've really wanted to buy it. And I don't know, I just kind of thought that the packaging of this palette and then the color of these brushes, I mean, they kind of match. They kind of go hand in hand. So let's do it. Let's try this one out. I'm really excited about this palette. It's an entire palette full of matte, dusty rose shades. I'm really fucking excited about it and I can't wait to dive right in. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this JS5 and I'm gonna dip into the shade Lolita. Now, I'm not sure if this is the exact shade as the Lolita eyeshadow that came out as a single, the one from like, what, 2 years ago? I'm gonna have to do a comparison swatch and just see if they're the same, because I feel like the swatches that I saw online when this was released made it kind of look a little bit different than what that original like blush slash eyeshadow was kind of supposed to be, an all over powder. It did look just a tiny bit different, but I'll go ahead and compare them and we'll see. The color story of this palette really just does it for me. It's almost like Naked 3, but amped up more, and it's all matte. I really like that it's an all matte palette. I think that's genius. Now, as much as I really do like this brush for laying that color down in the crease and kind of lightly blending it out, I still need to go in with an M504 because this one is just more rounded and it's going to be easier for me to blend out the edges so I don't have any harsh lines. Where with this brush, I just think it would take forever to get a really soft, smooth transition. So I will say that I think that this brush set is missing a really nice blending brush for a transition. With this brush, you can just go in and really quickly take the edge off of that. Literally take the edge off. Feel like there was still just a little bit of harshness happening, and this will just kind of smooth things out a little bit. And then just kind of smoke out the lower lash line with that. And then with the same brush, I'm going to dip into this shade next to Lolita. It's called Con Amour. And I'm just going to kind of press that brush in. And I think that this shade is going to be a nice lid shade. I also think that this set could have used a packing brush for shadow on the lid, but this seems to be doing the job, so I won't complain about that. And then I also think that once we start packing on really dark colors on the lower lash line, I think that I would have really liked an actual pencil brush in this set. I think 10 would have been a good number. I think that could have created an entire look without having to use any other brushes. Okay, so I'll go ahead and use one more shade out of this palette. I'm going to use this darkest shade, Eterno, and I'm going to take that on this JS6 brush that I had originally used for my nose contour, but this one is the smaller of the eyeshadow brushes. And I think what I'm going to do is just keep that darkest color on the lowest part of the lid. That way we get like a really nice gradient from the darkest to the lightest shade that we used. And then just do like a really quick, easy, classic smoky eye. I don't want to dick around with like shimmers and glitters and doing a halo and all of that kind of stuff. I want this to be really quick and easy. Now I am going to take an E36. I'm going to go ahead and dip into that darkest shade there too, because I just needed a little bit more precision at that lash line than any of these brushes were really going to give me. So just want to kind of get that darkest color as close to the roots of the lashes as possible. And then I'll kind of lightly blend that out from there. And applying that shade there with that pencil brush did okay on its own. I don't really need to do a whole lot of blending, but I still want to get in there and just make sure that all of that is softened up really well. All right, and there's only one brush left that we haven't used. This is the, what is this? This is the JS4. I'm going to use this Maybelline Master Chrome. This is in the shade Molten Rose Gold. I have used this on my channel before. So we'll just kind of hit the tops of the cheekbones, the tip of the nose, a little bit on the forehead, and a little bit on the Cupid's bow as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do lips and lashes off camera really quick, and I'll come right back with my final thoughts. Hey guys, it's now 3 days later. I'm sorry, my energy level is probably at about a -10 right now. I'm actually very sick right now, but I needed to come back on here and refilm a new outro because I have used the brushes and washed the brushes, and my opinions are just like a little bit different than they were when I was using them a few days ago. So my opinion hasn't changed at all on the sponges. If you're a fan of the Real Technique sponges, then you probably will like these, but I've never been a fan of those. I've also never been a fan of the regular Morphe sponges, the red ones. So I definitely will stick to the original Beauty Blender because those are just the sponges that I prefer. They are a little bit more expensive, but they're better quality overall. So I'm gonna stick with those. As far as the brushes go, the synthetic brushes are really, really nice actually, and surprisingly, because I'm usually not a huge fan of synthetic brushes, but these are actually dirty because I have used these a few more times and they didn't change shape at all after washing. They're still the exact same brushes. Oh, and the eyebrow brush, I really love this one and I want to pick this up as a single brush. I'll probably get a few backups of this one because this has just made my eyebrow application so fucking fast. But as far as the natural hair brushes went, after washing them, they became completely different brushes. So the JS6, before I washed it, it was really comparable to the Sigma E25 blending brush. They had a very similar shape and they had a very similar feel. But after washing the JS6, if you compare them now, they're very different. Now, a brush that morphed into a completely different brush after washing was the JS5. Before I had washed it, it was very similar to the Morphe M330, which is like a soft blending brush, but it definitely has like a pointed tip to it. But after washing it, it became very similar to the M504. This is the kind of brush that I really wanted to be included in this brush set. And before you washed it, it wasn't really this brush. So that was kind of a nice surprise. And then the JS4 highlighting brush, after washing it, it became just a little bit fluffier than the M510. They are very similar brushes, but I think that this one might have gotten just a little fatter and a little fluffier. But one thing to note was when I washed them, they definitely shed quite a bit, and it seems like they might still be shedding a little bit now. Yeah, there goes another one. And they're not bad brushes by any means, just something to note. But again, just to show you the difference of after washing as opposed to when you first take them out of the package, they are definitely very different brushes. And let me know in the comments down below if you got any of this collection and what you think of it, and I'll see you guys on the next one.